buddy boy, my longtime patron and general subscriber and Twitter follower Reverse Spectrum asked me to do a random drunk-ass anime history video. He said, you should continue that series, and it just so happened he sent me that tweet right when I was drunk as shit. So I thought, this is an appropriate time. Oh my god, I suddenly feel really hot. It suddenly feels incredibly hot in my room. I'm tempted to take my shirt off, but I don't want you to see my gross, fat body. So, okay. I want to talk about a concept that's been on my mind a lot lately. And I want to do a full video on this. I haven't written any full videos in a little while. My patrons will know why, because I've done some patron exclusive videos about it. But generally I haven't been up for writing a full video lately. I've been doing a lot of vlogs while I wait for the Devu and Ben Saint to move in with me. Anyways, I want to talk about the concept of Bathos. Bathos with a B. It's like pathos, but it's Bathos. It's got a B at the start. So Bathos is an idea of sort of anticlimax. It's an idea of pathos taken too far. I recommend looking up the Wikipedia definition of this or just searching it on Google. But it's pretty interesting because the idea of Bathos is essentially that when you make something so pathetic, so filled with pathos, that it's overwrought and over the top and just gone way too far, then it becomes hilarious. It goes full circle into being something comedic. Now, if you know anything about awesomely bad movies, and you're probably familiar with this concept. You're probably familiar with Bathos, which is where something's trying so hard to be good and so hard to be emotional, but it doesn't have the chops for it. So it comes off as stupid and bad and bland. But the funny thing about Bathos is that you can tap into it intentionally. And I think, in my experience, no country is doing this better than Japan. I almost said no medium's doing this better than anime, but there's a lot of live action films that are tapping into it as well. If you want the perfect example, if you've ever heard of the film Machine Girl or any of the films by that director, Machine Girl is a movie that has moments of super ultra violence. Most of the movie is super bloody, super crazy, over the top violence. But the actual story is goofily over-the-top dramatic. The characters just will go on these like long speeches about how much they care about each other and stuff. It's all about the power of friendship. It's very anime in that regard. But it's doing it all while having tongue in cheek. Like, this is a movie that clearly thinks of itself as a silly, stupid movie. And is clearly going for this weird, over-the-top, ridiculous aesthetic. Which is interesting, because a lot of people say that awesomely bad is something you can only achieve on accident. That you can only make something truly awesomely bad unintentionally. And yet, there's a lot of movies like Machine Girl that obviously are playing up awesomely bad and working. A lot of people like that movie. So what's going on? The answer is that awesomely bad is a narrow concept. Bathos is a concept not enough people are talking about. He says as he ate a bite of cheese and shell. And a few more bites. It's delicious. Bathos is fascinating. And I think somehow that the Japanese understand it better than the West at present. Because here we have awesomely bad, and we have deliberately bad. We have all these goofy B movies. We have these movies that are trying to play up how stupid they are. But I think that over here, we really regard those movies as that they should not take themselves seriously at all. That their plots should be, like, fully aware of how stupid they are. They should be really sarcastic. But in Japan, that's not really the case. In Japan, awesomely bad movies, like Machine Girl, like the other stuff by that director, they go full hard on sincerity. They go in the opposite direction. They try to be as sincere as possible to the point that it's really hilarious. And I think that this is a common aspect of Japanese cinema. That Japanese sarcasm is often about sincerity. Now, there used to be a saying that sarcasm didn't exist in the Japanese language. People used to say that because Japanese is very literal as a language. But the way that Japanese sincerity and the way that Japanese irony works is to be overly sincere. Japan has a very strong sense of irony. If you've heard me talk about the concept of serious comedy, like Sakamoto here, serious comedy is extremely ironic. The idea of it is to present a serious situation in complete detail and make it feel realistic and then make fun of it. That's about as ironic as it gets. An anime blogger I used to follow called Wild Arms Hero once wrote an article about the band Omokage Lucky Hole, who are known for their incredibly sarcastic lyrics. You might know them for doing the opening theme to... oh my god, I don't remember the name of the show. It was a Shaft show from the same writer as Mahoromatic. I don't remember the name right now. Good band, though. I like Omokage Lucky Hole, because their lyrics are incredibly sarcastic. They have songs such as, I left my daughter in my car while I was playing pachinko and she died. That's the name of one of their songs. In the summertime, I should add. Very ironic lyrics, because the song is about something dark and fucked up and serious, but they're presenting it in a smiling, hilarious way. That's where the irony comes from. That's what Japanese sarcasm's all about. And I think that this is widely misunderstood in the West, and that it has become, especially now, right now, it has become a genre of Japanese fiction that's being totally misunderstood. And the person who's at the forefront of this genre is Mario Kada, the writer, whom is being widely misunderstood and mischaracterized and insulted because people don't get it. Bathos, if you look it up, refers to sudden changes in mood, sudden changes in tone. When a story goes from very dramatic to very comedic in a short span of time. When there's an anticlimax where things seem dramatic but then suddenly they're funny. Normally, in the old days, this would have happened from something being just not good. I described this in my Phantom video just the other day, that show tried to be so dramatic and so real and heavy-handed, but the moments would be so goofy because of the bad presentation that it came across as funny, and I couldn't figure out if that was intentional or not, and I thought it was mostly not. But what if you could do that for real? What if you could purposefully swing those scales to the other side? I think Mario Kada is doing that very deliberately, and I think people aren't understanding it. But before we get too deep into Mario Kada, let's talk about a couple of other writers. Let's talk about Futakoi Alternative. What I find fascinating about Futsukoi Alternative, which was one of the early shows by Studio B, which was one of the early shows by Studio UFO Table. Why did I say B Train? I don't know. One of the early UFO Table shows before they became the fucking Fate Stay Night Factory and started doing all this shitty digital effects work. By shitty, I mean amazing, but it's not my aesthetic. Futsukoi Alternative was this show that was super bizarre because of the fact that the first episodes were action comedy, highly intense action, highly frenetic comedy, these crazy, like, over-the-top scenes. And then all of a sudden, it gets really dramatic out of nowhere. All of a sudden, it's the most dramatic show in the universe. All of a sudden, characters are crying and bad stuff is happening and it's kind of dark and it's kind of fucked up and it's like, wait a minute, is this the same show? And then at the end, it goes in a totally lighthearted, over-the-top action comedy direction, even more so than at the beginning. It becomes this really romantic story about these characters fighting for their love and stuff like that. It's some pretty weird stuff. And I love it, because no other story would do that. And I think that when we start setting rules for stories, we have fucked up. Look, rules for stories come as a result of us saying, I liked this story. What did it do? It did this, 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 and this. This is what a lot of my videos are. I take a look at a show, I say, it did this, 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 and this. That's why it's good. But as soon as we start taking that as, this is how you make something good, it becomes a problem. When people are going around saying, if you want to make a good show, you have to write your characters this way. Your drama has to follow this template. You can't make a good show while following all these weird rules. You've fucked up. Because a good story is one that makes you feel something. One that makes you connect with it. And if you connect with it, then it's good. So the question becomes, why is it good? I've seen countless reviews that will say things like, conventionally, this show shouldn't be good, but for some reason I liked it. And these people seem to think that those shows are just exceptions to the rule. This show is totally different from what I understand to be a good show, so I guess it just somehow works. I don't know why. That's fucking lazy. If a show is good, then clearly it's following some kind of logic. If you don't understand that logic, figure it out! If you can't figure it out, you're not doing your fucking job. So what's going on? Why is Futsukoi Alternative entertaining, even though it totally breaks all of the logic of what good pacing is in a series? If you ask me, it's because the show taps into Bathos. It taps into this overblown, insane emotion. And I think that there's other shows that have done it just as well, if not better. The most famous example in anime would be Angel Beats. Angel Beats is fucking weird, and the reason it's fucking weird is that it was intended to be a lot longer than it was, and it had to get cut down for time. They only got one season, they wanted a lot more. Jun Maeda is a weird fucking writer who likes his stories to be long and detailed and full of weird stuff. You may know him as the writer of Air Cannon Clannad, Angel Beats, Little Busters, and Charlotte. Charlotte, which did not receive quite the level of acclaim that Angel Beats did, because somehow it failed at trying to do what Angel Beats succeeded at. What Angel Beats succeeded at is that the comedy was actually pretty funny. People liked the characters. People liked the drama. When it got to the ending was fucking ruthlessly tear-jerking. I cried like a baby at the end of Angel Beats in a way I haven't at any other anime. And following conventional logic, Angel Beats shouldn't have been good, because the pacing was all over the place. Every episode felt totally different, and yet somehow it capitalized on every emotion it was going for perfectly. When it wanted to be funny, it was funny. When it wanted to be dramatic, it was dramatic. When it wanted to be sad, it was sad. When it wanted to make you cry, it could make you cry. It made you switch between emotions. Sometimes those emotions were jarring. There are parts of the show that I thought I hated the first, when I watched it, like back in 2009. There were parts, 2010 rather, there were parts that I fucking hated because the tone changed all of a sudden and I didn't understand what was happening. I was like, why? I was so used to what you were doing. Why are you doing something else? But it would always win me over. Every time it wanted to make me cry, it did. Every time it wanted to make me laugh, it did. It's a fascinating thing, because we've taught ourselves that narrative is supposed to flow in a certain way, that it's supposed to sort of pick one or integrate them in a way that makes sense. Keep your comedy far away from your drama. Have your comedic moments, wait a few episodes, build up the drama, punch us in the chest. I mean, it makes sense, but it's not logical, because the reality is we can be affected by something sudden. We can be affected by something like Angel Beats. I don't think you have to look very hard to figure that out, because that show is really popular. People love Angel Beats. Not only is it successful, it's critically well acclaimed. And when I say critically, I don't mean necessarily by the conventional definition of critics, people who see themselves as culture critics who are smarter than everyone else. Those people tend to have a lot of very specific standards, which Angel Beats might not meet. But Angel Beats is rated highly. If you look at what people score the show, it's a good score. If you look at something like Charlotte, it falls short. When I say Charlotte is critically not well liked, I don't just mean among the elite. I mean, the show's got like a 6 point something on Mal, and it's hard to get that low on Mal. Angel Beats is beloved. It made people feel things. It made people cry. It made people laugh. It made people feel, in spite of breaking so many rules, so much conventional wisdom. And I think it did that because Bathos is entertaining. It's something that taps into human emotion. And the reason it works so well is that real life is sudden. Real life comes out of nowhere. Real life hits you in the fucking face sometimes, Real life doesn't conform to what you're expecting. It doesn't conform to what makes sense narratively. It doesn't just... Look. If I had to explain Bathos best, this isn't a direct comparison, but it makes sense to me. There was a period, September, about 5 years ago, I want to say, my mom suddenly got cancer. Stage 4 Burkitt's lymphoma. We were told that if we had brought her to the hospital 1 day later, she would have been dead. My mom was literally on death's door and had no idea. She just suddenly noticed she had spots all over her body, red spots. And then she was in her room and she suddenly collapsed and passed out. She contacted my dad. He took her to the hospital and they said, yeah, she's got stage 4 cancer of a rare cancer, a cancer that no one her age gets. It's a cancer, Burkitt's lymphoma is a cancer that most people either get when they're really old or really young. It's almost never seen in women in their late 40s. It was out of nowhere. None of us saw it coming. Life's like that sometimes. Sometimes suddenly, BAM! Something fucked up and dramatic happens in your life. And I think that's why Bathos works. I think that's why that kind of shocking, out of nowhere, weird feeling can work. Sometimes weird is exactly what life is. Sometimes off-putting. Sometimes not making any sense. Sometimes it's just like, did that really just happen? If you looked at my life as a narrative, if you looked at my mom's life as a narrative, if you looked at it like, here's where it's going along good, the cancer would be like, whoa, different direction, you know? She didn't see it coming. It had nothing to do with her narrative arc up to that point. Had nothing to do with what I was going through or my family was going through. None of us saw that coming. We all had our own plans. We all had our own things going on. And yet, out of nowhere, cancer. Funny thing about that, my mom was in the hospital for a good 6 weeks, transferred to another hospital for a while. I started driving her to meetings. She went through chemo, went bald, hair grew back blonde for some reason, and she survived. And now it's gone. The cancer's all gone. It's not something we think about anymore. It's not a part of our life anymore. It's gone. It's gone. What a weird plot thread. What a plot thread that came out of nowhere, really didn't go anywhere, and disappeared. Weird. Life's weird. Weird stuff happens. Doesn't make sense. Why would the story go that way? Who would write something so inconsistent, so unbelievable as stage 4 cancer? Out of nowhere, about to die cancer. And then it disappears. Sure is an anticlimax. Sure doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But it happened. God, that's weird. What's up with that? Bathos intrigues me because Bathos is real. It's intense. It's funny, but it's sad. It hits you all at once in every emotion. When you watch Angel Beats, the moments where you laugh are as real as the moments as when you cry. When you watch Myoega, a show that was maligned by so many people because the narrative doesn't make any sense. But the point of that show was to ridicule how stupid it was. It was a parody. It was a show about how life is fucking dumb. How all these characters legitimately thought their lives were in danger and they weren't at all. It was all just bullshit. The whole show, the whole plot was bullshit. None of it mattered. Everyone thought they were being chased through the woods by evil monsters, and it was really just their personal demons. And you could kind of figure that out from early on, because they're all a bunch of crazy people. She wrote Kisniver. Kisniver is a show that is as pathetic as possible. These characters who feel everything so strongly. Everything is such a big deal to these characters. Everything is so dramatic, overwrought. They're all just screaming and feeling and falling in love and being so into it, but the show ridicules them for it. It's like, look at these fucking idiot teenagers. Look at this dumb shit that teenagers go through. They think their emotions matter so much. Luluco was a commentary on this. This middle schooler thinks that her first love is so important. It's laughable. And yet, it is important. to her, she feels it so strongly. And the show lets us understand that. It presents her feelings in such a grandiose, epic way that we can't help feeling what she feels, even though we know it doesn't matter. We know that the first love of a middle schooler is inconsequential, and yet it's presented in a way we understand. So we're like, yeah, of course. If your love could shake the universe, what could be more important? Even though it's not important. Human life is not important. The universe doesn't care about us. We live in a nihilistic nightmare. There's no God. There's no higher power. We amount to nothing. When we die, our consciousness stops and we sink into the soil and there's nothing left. So why not feel what we feel as strongly as we can? Why not go all out with our emotions and passions? Why not just feel everything? The comedy, the sadness, everything. Let's feel it as strongly as we can. In the moment to moment. When something funny happens, let's laugh really hard. When something sad happens, let's cry and cry our eyes out. That's what Bathos is. That's the appeal of it. And I think the writers who can do it well understand it. I think they understand that life is chaotic and strange. And it doesn't always make sense. It doesn't always follow a logical through line. Sometimes it changes on a dime. It just suddenly switches and we can't predict it. It doesn't make sense as a satisfying narrative. It's not something with a beginning, middle, and end that all flow into each other. It just takes these veers and turns and goes in all these different directions that we're not ready for. It's not satisfying, but it's real. It's not like normal stories. And I think that's why it's so hard for people to get into. People hate these shows. People who can't get into these shows violently oppose them because they go against everything we want out of narrative. We want it to be satisfying. We want it to flow and to make sense. But life is never like that. Real life is not the Joker making his Xanatos gambit, saying like, I set this up, like Joker and Batman making these plotting schemes. Each one has their idea of what the other's going to do, and it's all premeditated, and when every single thing happens, it flows in a natural order. I predicted you were going to do this, and I set this up, and this happened. That's satisfying narratively, but it's not realistic. Real life is unpredictable and weird. Real life is you wake up thinking you're going to do this and you end up doing that and you go to bed having accomplished none of what you originally intended. And I think that's where Bathos comes from. And personally, I really love it. And I think it's the most maligned genre of fiction out there. See you in the next one.